Well, I've got the pleasure of introducing Rick Preve. Preve, of course it is. I've interviewed him before for a film he showed at a London festival, Patagonian Bones, but here is for his latest. Well, it is documentary officially, and I say officially because Coming Home, Rick, I'm waffling, but basically this amazing film is a mix of narrative and drama and documentary, isn't it, actually? With CG work. Over to you, if you can explain what this film is. Is that a right way to describe this film?
Yeah, some people talk about docu-fiction. I don't know if it's a term that's used.
No,
we were interested in blending historical recreations. We actually built part of a World War II submarine on a 1-to-1 scale in a studio. And we found a place in southern Argentina that looked a lot like Sudan. And then we mixed that with images actually taken in Sudan in 2017. So it's got historical recreations from World War II, and it's got 2017-18 footage as well.
It's a fantastic film. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And anyone that's seen my previous interview will know, I think we talked then about, you do have your own production company that's it's based in Argentina.
It's based in Argentina. In this case, we actually only did the historical recreations in Argentina.
Yeah.
The documentary part was shot in Italy and in Sudan.
Yeah.
We went to Sudan 3 times to this island to look originally for a submarine that had sank there in World War II. And then kind of by chance, we happened upon the grave of the only sailor who died in the wreck and had been buried on the island, and we spent 5 years trying to get him back to Italy to be buried next to his mother.
Tell me about the genesis of you finding out about all of this.
Yeah, every journalist
because there's always a story.
Yeah, every journalist asks me, how did a guy from Argentina get involved?
Well, because it's a bit like the Patagonian Bones. I love the film. I love both films, but I love the story behind the film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it came out by chance. I work a lot in underwater photography, and Sudan is one of the few places in the world where you do have still a lot of sharks. So I was diving and photographing and filming sharks.
Yeah.
And totally by chance, one of the dive guides said to me one day, you know, they say that as we were leaving the island, he says to me, you know, they say that here a World War II submarine sank and there's an Italian sailor buried on the island. I said, you're telling me this now? We've been here for several days. And so the kernel of the story was left with me. So using my contacts in the Italian Navy, I went into the historical archives and was able to get a significant body of documents that led me to investigate the story further and use it kind of as a script for the film.
Right, okay. And I don't know, how do you come across these fascinating stories, don't you? I think you must have a research team.
No.
Because these stories don't just drop into your lap, come on.
Well, I think that also with my next film called A Grayling Never Dies, about the life of a British bandit woman, Helen Greenhill in Patagonia, it often happens that I'm working for some other project, and while I'm shooting that project, I hear new stories. I was working originally on a documentary about Darwin for National Geographic in Patagonia, and I began to hear the story of the British bandit woman, the British woman. And that's how I learned about Helen Greenhill, and over the last decade, I slowly pieced together the story until I realized there's something there that could make a good film.
Thing is, life passes by so quickly, and whenever you put a story together like this, and again we touched upon this in the last interview, it takes years and years. It really does, because I know the research, and it's typically maybe 4, 5, 6 years, and that's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, and I always say it takes me 3 to 5 years to make a film, but I age about 10. So they're tough years. But you know, the key, I think, is to be able to think in simultaneous and to have new projects that you're already thinking, because you have to have the patience to finish a film.
Yeah.
And there are times when you just have to wait. You have to wait for the post-production money to come in, you have to wait for the distribution deal to come in, and you gotta be already thinking about the next project and researching the next idea.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
And yeah, and then of course I know it's finding the audience and you know, not finding the audience, the wrong way to describe it, knowing that the audience will be interested in the project, I guess what I'm saying, because this is fascinating, the last one was fascinating, and I'm sure any project you put your hand, Grayling Never Dies, will be fascinating. But I suppose when you're going through it and deciding, well, are we going to make this? Yeah, I'd love to make it. Oh, hang on a minute. Who is actually going to be interested in this?
Yeah, you know, they say a lot, and the advice is you should be thinking about your audience even when you're thinking about the concept or idea of a film. I'm not so sure that I agree 100%. I think if you're going to put 3 to 5 years of your life into making something, you better like it yourself. I think what's important is to read a lot, to study poetry or painting or sculpture, and try to get a solid grounding in culture, and then judge the worthiness of a story in that broad context. And if you think it's a good story after having watched many films, seen many theater plays, read many novels, then it's probably going to be a good story.
Yeah.
But I think you have to have it in your heart, because if you don't have it in your heart, you're not cut out to do independent cinema.
Oh, that's a good point. Because and particularly with that, because the risk is kind of all yours, isn't it?
The risk is all yours, and also emotionally. I mean, if
the drain of actually trying to,
Yeah, I think it comes, I think almost every single filmmaker in at least one of more of her or his projects has come to the thought of saying, well, maybe I should drop this, either this particular project or this as a career. If you haven't done that, you haven't pushed enough the limits of the envelope. So you have to have that inner strength where you really believe in your project in order to carry it through. Because if you're just doing it for somebody else or an audience, you're probably not going to make it.
That's a really good point. And I've asked this to a filmmaker earlier, and I've asked it to filmmakers lots of times. You know, talk to me about these sleepless nights. Talk to me about these dark times when you either begin pre, during, post, and most of them say, yeah, I've had doubts.
Yeah, we have doubts, and very often, you know, you're anguished over your choices. Did I choose the right actor or actress? Is this a story that somebody's going to be interested in? But in the end, you have to have faith. You have to have faith in your product, faith in who you are, faith in your ability as a storyteller. And well, if you can have a little bit of luck, that helps too.
Okay, but you know, it helps that. God, I'm going to say you've been around the block a few times. That sounds awful, but in a nice way. So what I mean is, look, I'm not just saying this because we're sitting here. I can rely on you, we can rely on you to produce top quality film, right?
Well, thank you, and I credit very much.
The look of the film is great.
Thank you. I credit very much my times at National Geographic with great producers like Linda Goldstein, John Bredar, Marianne Culpepper, Malvina Martin, Jeff Luck, all these guys. They really taught me about story development. And also at National Geographic, we always used to say 90% of the story is access. You got to find a unique story that somebody else has not been able to tell before. And once you identify that, then you really made big strides already towards making a good film.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, that applies to narrative fiction. I mean, the classic one is Robin Hood, which I know has been told 100 times. But there was that Robin Hood that was released, the Kevin Costner one. At the same time, by pure luck, there was another one. The Irish guy was in. I can't remember who it was, but they clashed. You kind of think, well, wouldn't they have sussed this out? You know?
Yes.
Because of course the one that was released later wasn't as good, and it bombed.
I see.
So I know that's different, but it shows you that even big Hollywood filmmakers can, because you're going to split the audience. It's going to soften your film, isn't it? It's going to dilute your film, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit, but like I said, yes, I think in that case having a unique story is it's like, you know, when you get good team players in a soccer team, well, you've already made great strides towards winning the game.
Yeah.
So you gotta find the right story and also the right people to develop it. Film is a collaborative effort. I know there's people who are now making films on a cell phone by themselves, but most of the time you actually need to work with other people. And if you find the right kind of people and you got a good story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, then you're probably going to get there eventually.
And you know, the thing is, that's brilliant, and I totally agree with that. You can have the best equipment in the world and make a shit film, if we've seen it, and you can have the worst equipment in the world and make a great film. It's the story.
It's the story, and I think particularly for young people who are starting in cinema making right now, it's sometimes better not to have a lot of money when you start, because then you can only make little mistakes. You know, if you happen to be wealthy and you have a lot of money for your first film, you could really mess it up big time. So sometimes having a scarcity of resources really forces you to think about what it is that you want to tell and why you want to make this movie. And I think that's at the heart of the filmmaking process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, it's difficult because I know independent filmmakers want a really good polish to their film where possible, but the trouble is a polish to a film costs money.
It costs money, and we're lucky in Argentina. We have a big talent pool with the inflation and the drop in the value of the pesos. If you can try to sell your product outside of Argentina and market it in Europe or in the United States, there's a really favorable exchange rate, so we can get some pretty good work done technically. And I've been lucky to have great people, like the post-production on Coming Home, and all those special effects were done by this company called Control Z HD in Buenos Aires, and they were fantastic.
Oh, the special effects are excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, they are really, and I love the way that you've woven the narrative into it. I know it's been done before, but it's really hard to explain what makes it stand out. It does make it special because it adds an air of drama to it. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, because I think the era of the purely educational narrative documentary is over. I think with Michael Moore and Morgan Spurlock and all those guys that became characters in their own documentary and began to have a more narrative form of documentary, the documentary has evolved. And you cannot just have a documentary that tells you something. It also needs to involve you emotionally. And so you need to blur a little bit the line between documentary and fiction storytelling, and that's what I've tried to do.
No, very well. And actually, again, it's funny because I've seen Michael Moore's new one. I always get them confused. Fahrenheit 9/11. Is that the latest one?
No, he's done, I think Sicko came after Fahrenheit 9/11.
Yeah, I've seen the latest one, but always get them mixed up.
Right.
Great film, too long.
Yeah, well, you know, that's one of the problems with sometimes documentaries. If you're very involved, you lose sense a little bit of the timing that the audience, what does the audience want to see or not. It's a pitfall that you sometimes have a difficult time judging.
Yeah, once again, it's fantastic. Thank you,
Thank
Rick.
you so much.
Love interviewing you.
Yeah,
You're a
thank
star.
you.
Thank you.